In this video, I'm covering a configuration option on the Garmin Edge cycling GPS units that I wish I had discovered a lot sooner. Now, a lot of my riding recently has been unplanned. I'd look at the wind direction before starting my ride, preferably taking off into the headwind and coming home with a tailwind. I'd have a look at how much time that I had allocated for that ride, usually 2 to 3 hours, and off I'd go. No real plans on exactly which route that I would take. Being on a gravel bike, this opens up a whole new world of ride options. No longer with the tarmac ending and turning to dirt mean I'd have to do a U-turn and backtrack. The gravel bike will pretty much go anywhere. Okay, so maybe not there. With these rides into the unknown and sometimes into the trees, I've been relying on the mapping on these units heavily to determine which path I would take. But one thing has bugged me. As soon as I zoomed out too far on the map to see a little further up the road, I'd lose the detail that I needed. It would then only show the major roads or highways or sealed roads. I'd have to zoom back in, scroll around and inevitably hit a bump and then lose that screen, and it just wasn't working for me. So I dived deep into the Garmin Edge rabbit hole of menu options and I found exactly what I needed. Cutting straight to the chase, it turned this into this. And it's been a game changer for the rides that I've been doing on the big open plains or the big open sky rides that I've been doing up north. Again, cutting straight to the chase about how I did this, it's profile, navigation, map visibility mode, auto is the default, change that to custom. The detail then defaults to normal and change that to most. I left the other mapping options as defaults, but I did change the map theme to high contrast and I set draw contours to off. That just gets in the way. So in summary, what that does, it gives you the most mapping detail at a 1.2K zoom level, which means you can see about 5, 6, 7 kilometers up the road on the larger Edge 1030 units and a little less on the smaller 530 and 830 units. This map setting of most has been brilliant for the big open space riding that I've been doing. There is no question about it, this has been a game changer for the riding that I've been doing solo on those big open roads. A few tips with this one. This map level detail is set on a per profile basis, so it's good for gravel and mountain bike profiles. For commuting or road riding where you're in town, it's probably a bit too much detail on screen. The more detail drawn on the screen, the slower it is to update. So some of the older units, looking at you, maybe a little slower to refresh the screen. The newer units are okay with this, but just do be aware, more detail on the screen requires a little bit more processing power, may also use a little bit more battery. I haven't dug too far into that though. I also turned auto zoom off. I want control. I don't want it to zoom in on the next corner that I take or something like that. It just becomes a little clumsy. So more on the zoom levels on the Garmin Edge units before we close out this video today. And again, down another rabbit hole, there are 27 zoom levels on the Garmin Edge units. That's way too many. There are 9 that are usable, from 50 meters through to around 2,000 meters. And it's within that zone, the Goldilocks zone, that the map level detail options lie. I've marked there in green which map level detail and which zoom level detail is the turning point and things get removed from the screen. So for example, least at 80 meters will show full detail, but as soon as you zoom to 120 meters, you start losing detail. Through to most at 1.2 kilometers. When you zoom out to 2 kilometers with detail most, you'll lose some detail too. Now I've toyed around with a few ideas of how to show this level of detail on the head units. It took me a little while and I think we are there. So hold tight, we're gonna go through least through to most at all the zoom levels on the screen, and I'll do some comparisons with some non-Garmin head units and see how those levels of details stack up. Okay, for the zoom level detail tests, I'll use the Creswick Forest, which is a little more detailed than just the open road gravel riding I've been doing. And here's what it looks like in person. That road there and the road next to it look very similar. So it's important to have mapping, preferably detailed mapping. So here's the least level detail maps shown on screen here with what I would call the usable levels from 50 meters through to 2 kilometers. And we can see the 50 meters and 80 meters zoom levels, we have full detail. And then moving up to the 120 meters, we start to lose some of those roads. Well, actually, the roads we're going to ride on disappear. So from 120, 200, 300, 500, 800, all the way up to 2 kilometers, well, you might as well be on the moon. We can't see anything with the least level mapping detail configured. Switching up to less level detail, which is one more than least, we can see full mapping details now on 50, 80, 120, and 200, which is pretty usable in the complex network of roads and trails in the forest. But when we hit 300 to 500, 800, 1.2k, and 2 kilometers, not an ideal setting to have this at less. Stepping up from less into normal, and we now have full mapping detail up to the 300 meter zoom level, which again is very usable for here in the forest, but from 500 onwards, we start to lose detail. Now we get into the interesting stuff. Switching up to more, we get full mapping at 800 meters, which allows us to plan what I would call a directional route a few kilometers up on the fly. Very handy to use this. And from here, I can see the main roads that we do use through the forest, going from south on the Ballarat side up to the north Creswick side, which is where the coffee shop is. And flipping to most, we get full mapping through to 1.2 kilometers. And it's only when we zoom back out to 2 kilometers that we lose the finer detail. I typically use the 300 to 500 meters in the forest, and I use 1.2 kilometers out on the open gravel roads. Bonus round number 1 today is the Edge 1030 Plus up against the Elemnt Bolt 2, the new coloured version of the Bolt from Wahoo. Now, one thing of note here is that the scaling is different. So we have about the same level of detail on screen, but one zoom level is 20 meters and the other lists 100 meters. Jumping up to 120 meters and 200 meters, we can see the level of detail very similar across both units, just presented a little differently. Jumping back out to 200 meters and 500 meters, again, full detail shown on both, and very usable maps for gravel riding or mountain bike riding in this area. Pulling back out now to 500 meters and 1 kilometer, with the differences becoming more apparent there, but still very easy to navigate your way around using either or. Pulling back out to 1.2 Ks and 2 kilometers on the Bolt, which this is where the Edge 1030 Plus will bow out. We'll do one more zoom out to 2 kilometers and 5 kilometers on the Bolt 2, and we can see the coffee shop there in Creswick. Well, not quite. Doesn't quite have that level of detail yet. Bonus round number 2, the Edge 1030 Plus up against the Karoo 2, which has a mobile phone infinite level of zoom to it for these maps. But you can see as we pull further out, it starts to lose the detail we need. So we're at about the 1 kilometer, 1.2k mark here. It starts to drop some detail off. And as we scroll out to the 2 kilometer mark, and we can see Creswick, not much detail there at all. Similar to the Elemnt Bolt unit, I don't believe there's any user configurable map options for the Karoo 2 to show more detail at different zoom levels. So there we have it, map level detail demystified on the Garmin Edge GPS units. This has been using the default maps from Garmin, so make sure you plug into Garmin Express and do your full updates. As always, if you've enjoyed this one, give it a thumbs up, hit subscribe to support this channel. To take that support a little further, hit that membership button, it's much appreciated, and we'll see you soon.